Hey, y'all, it's Michelle with SLP Full Disclosure. I'm so excited to be joined by two of the most amazing young men that I had the pleasure of meeting recently. Josh Eliand and Chirag Kulkarni reached out to me via email, a couple of weeks ago, guys?
Yeah, I think so,
and they wanted to chat about AI, that big term that everybody's been hearing about in the world. But specifically, they have developed a platform for speech language pathologists. And we're going to get to that at the end of the podcast. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about Josh and Chirag, let you guys learn a little bit about them. And then we're going to let them teach us, which I've told them earlier, I've learned so much already just from reading their platform and chatting with them about AI in general, how it's revolutionizing the healthcare industry, and how we can bring this AI into the speech and language world. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having us on.
You are so welcome. All right, let me tell you guys a little bit about Josh and Chirag. Josh Eliand is the co-founder of Sira, an AI-driven automation platform designed for non-technical users. He has a background in strategy and operations across private sector industries like Bain & Company, as well as NGOs. Chirag Kulkarni is a co-founder of Sira, an innovative AI platform focused on automating manual tasks within healthcare settings. Leveraging his experience from McKinsey & Company, as well as a number of high-growth health tech startups, Chirag specializes in applying artificial intelligence to streamline healthcare operations and improve patient care. He is passionate about harnessing AI and technology to address real-world challenges in healthcare, particularly in areas such as speech therapy and clinical workflows. Wow, you guys are amazing. So after our chat that we had a few weeks ago where I met you guys, I was just absolutely so impressed with your drive and your energy and just, you're so smart. You guys are so smart. And I'm old enough to be your mom. So I'm super excited about having you guys here today. So welcome, welcome, welcome. First off, let's talk about your individual backgrounds and what got you to this point where you are now living in California, because you didn't start in California, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I want to hear that story. So Josh, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are today on this podcast, on your podcast debut. He said he had never been on a podcast before. So let's hear from you, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having us. Super excited. But yeah, so I grew up in the Atlanta area, went to school at the University of Virginia, where I was very lucky to meet Chirag early on there. I was studying systems engineering. So, I was excited about using technology, but I wanted to use it in real world applications. And so studied stats as well, but ended up going more the business route after college. So I worked at Bain & Company, which is a consulting firm, doing work across a bunch of different industries. So I worked in supply chain and healthcare and tech and education, really across the board. But what I really found was that there was so much advancement in technology going on that I was following, but wasn't necessarily super present in my day-to-day work, and wanted to jump fully into that world and take advantage of, leveraging all of this technology in ways that could help the types of people that I had worked with in that business setting, but really applying the cutting edge modern, tools that exist for folks that may not actively seek them out or know about them on their own. And so making it accessible and applicable for those folks. And so that's really what kind of drove Chirag and I. We both have personal connections to the speech space as well. My partner grew up in speech therapy and had an SLP who had a huge impact on her development. But she also kind of experienced some disruptions, right? She, unfortunately, her SLP passed away and she had like a several year period where she couldn't find care. And so that was a big, I think, driving principle for us, was empowering SLPs to make their care as high quality as possible and allow them to really focus on providing care versus all the other things that go on with running a practice or working in a school-based setting, wherever it may be, as well as improving that experience for the patient themselves interfacing with the speech world. So yeah, it's been a great journey. We can chat more about, we've had lots of learnings. We've learned a ton from SLPs and folks in the healthcare space more broadly. And yeah, we're super excited to continue helping empower them and work together to, again, elevate that care and the experience of folks in the field as well.
That's amazing. So I love your personal connection with speech therapy. So many times people are like, what does a speech therapist do? A lot of times people don't even know what we do. So I love that. What about you, Chirag? What is your background? It sounds like you guys met when you were in college and just became, fast friends, and now
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. I think it's been probably 8-9 years now that Josh and I have known each other. But yeah, I've been out in San Francisco for the past about 4 years since graduating from UVA. Before that, though, I'm an East Coast kid at heart, born and raised out in Pittsburgh, and grew up in speech therapy, which was the primary driver behind why we decided to go down this route. I think, to this day, it is by far the biggest challenge that I had overcome, and I really just have a ton to thank my SLP for growing up, and yeah, we just wanted to give back to the field for kind of what it's given us. But grew up in speech, went to the University of Virginia where I met Josh, studied math, computer science, and then I did my master's in data science. Similarly to Josh, decided to take kind of that technical background, applied to business settings, and went down the route of consulting. I went to McKinsey & Company, which is also a consulting firm out in San Francisco, mainly focusing on technology applications in a range of different sectors, such as healthcare. That was great for a few years, but really wanted to dive into what is the cutting edge technology and how can we apply it to really up leveling quality of care for people. And so I've jumped around to a couple of different health tech startups over the past few years, a longevity startup, a behavioral health startup, where we give folks access to therapy and psychiatry care.
Oh, wow.
And then back in December, decided to leave that last role full time and jump into the startup. And Josh was crazy enough to join me out in San Francisco. So he packed up, moved out of Boston, and moved in with me for the past few months.
Wow. So you guys just quit your jobs and said, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We definitely did a little bit of research. We were having conversations with SLPs, just getting to know the space, getting to know the pain points where we might be able to help. But I think we pretty quickly gathered enough confidence that there were real issues that we could help solve. And decided to take the leap and try to do our best to help.
Mm-hmm.
So was it your personal connection with this speech therapy? Because speech language pathology is such a very specialized field. And Chirag, you said something, you had worked in behavioral health for a little while. So how did you, in the entire healthcare industry, how did you just land on, we're going to do speech language, we're going to do an AI platform for speech pathology? How did you land on that?
Yeah. So it was definitely kind of a bit of a windy journey. So originally we, had thought that there was this opportunity to help get SLPs more clients and create kind of like a virtual platform for them to connect with more folks. I think, we had seen this work in the mental health space. We see a lot of teletherapy, telepsychiatry going on. But as we started chatting with more and more SLPs in November and December, we heard that problem at hand is not...
It's not the service delivery. It's not working with our clients. It's all of the other things that we have to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so we heard a lot of folks say okay, that sounds interesting, but I'm good on building out my caseload, or I'm good at working with my clients. I like to be in person. What I don't like is all of the documentation that comes with it, all of the admin work. And so, we heard this over and over again from a number of SLPs, and we heard a lot of folks saying it's leading to significant burnout in the field. It's leading to some serious challenges, and that felt like a way meatier problem for Josh and I to go after.
Yeah, it really is, because the easiest part of my job is sitting down with my kids on a day-to-day basis, and I do work virtually. But sitting down with them and having those one-on-one therapy sessions, that's the easiest part of my job. But then I've got my SOAP notes I have to do. Then I have my billing I have to do. And I will tell anybody, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the hardest part of my job is the very beginning of the school year, when they dump 75 kids on your caseload and everybody goes to art and PE and music and RSP and recess and all these things and choir. And you've got to come up with a schedule, and they can't miss those core, they can't miss reading, they can't miss math and all those. That's the hardest part. And it literally takes me a week to get that done. And I will go through probably 10 or 15 versions of a schedule. Yeah, that's the hardest part. What was that baseline data? What were those questions that you were asking the SLPs that you were trying to get that when you were first getting this off the ground? What kind of information were you getting from them?
Yeah, I think we try to keep it pretty open-ended to start, versus going in with a certain hypothesis. We knew we had a lot to learn from folks who were deep in the field. And so it was really just about getting to know them, getting to know what their workflow looked like. To your point, like, what are those big things that they hate or, that drive them crazy? Everybody, most of the folks we talked to really like actually providing the care, but it was all the things around the edges, the enablers, right? Like the things that have to go on in the background that they were spending a lot of time on. And so we just kind of asked them, what are your favorite parts of the job? What are your least favorite? What do you spend a lot of time doing that you wish you didn't have to? And to Chirag's point, we pretty quickly, the documentation theme certainly arose. We heard a lot about the scheduling too, specifically within the school systems. But the documentation piece just across different care settings, we heard pretty universally, takes up a ton of time, depending on how folks are, if they're, how their contract or structured or what kind of role they're in. Like oftentimes they're not being compensated necessarily, or at least not fairly for all of that work. It's
non-billable hours for sure. Those non-billable hours, and those hours add up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And bleeding into their nights and their weekends and, making the job take up more of their life and spending a lot of times on the things that didn't bring them energy. And so that's really where we started to key in on some of those pain points and think through how we could help address them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've talked to your SLPs, you've gotten all this information, you have found out that it's really the extra things that's causing the headache. Where do you start? Like, do you just open up your computer? Like I would open up my computer and open up a Google Doc. You just Chirag was like, hey, let's just write an AI platform. But where do you start with that?
Yeah. I think the way that we started was, what's the most minimum version of this product that can solve this problem for SLPs? Like, we really wanted to validate that what we're building has the potential to solve the problem. And so we tried to build, a very initial version using a couple of AI tools out there and put something together in a few weeks. But a big component of this is, we knew, like, Josh and I are not SLPs. There's a lot of practice specific knowledge that you need to build something like this. And so we wanted to partner with SLPs from the very beginning. So we reached out to a number of different practices that seemed like, they could be a good fit to partner together, and that we're interested in leveraging new technology, and approach them as design partners. We them and ask, like, hey, listen, we want to help build this tool for the field, and we'd love if we could do this hand in hand with you. And that was probably, I think, one of the best decisions that Josh and I could make. There's only so much that we could do ourselves, but we needed them to come in and say, like, okay, this is not how we would typically phrase it, or these are the main types of documents that we want to create. And we learned so much in the process. So we really wanted to co-create this with the field.
Yeah, that's amazing. What about just the limitations? Like, let's talk about pros and cons of AI in general, because that's kind of what I talked about a little bit when I did that solo episode about just using the AI responsibly. And what are the pros and cons of it? I mean, obviously, we don't, as a speech pathologist, that personal connection is so important with our clients, whether we're working in early intervention with families, or if we're in school aged, or we're in private practice, wherever that may be. Just that personal connection is so important. And that's the piece that we don't want to lose. But like Josh said earlier, it's the things around the edges that maybe there's something out there. So let's talk about the pros of AI in general, just in healthcare, and maybe specifically for speech.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, to your point, that was kind of the approach that we took coming in. Is we certainly don't think that this technology should be replacing a speech therapist, right? Like, what we want to do, or our goal was, how do we let SLPs do the part of the job that they're really important for, and that they're really specialized in, and that they really like doing, and then take away those other pieces. And so, our thought process was, if we can allow folks to not need to worry about taking a bunch of notes or taking down different metrics during the session, they can be like fully present, right, with the person that they're serving, and kind of take that off of their mind, right? They know that afterwards their note's going to be generated. They're going to be able to make the tweaks and still exercise their expert judgment, but not need to worry about doing the little things live in session, or not need to spend that same amount of time after. So I think that's one of the big things that we've seen for us in our daily lives, but also for speech therapists, is the efficiency piece, right? Doing those manual things that can at least get you a really good starting point on whatever type of output or whatever type of task you're trying to execute. Can it get you like a 90% version and let you focus on just the piece that really needs that human expert judgment and not the basic kind of mundane underlying elements?
Yeah.
So I think the efficiency is definitely one big benefit of it. I don't know if there's others that come to you, Chirag.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the main thing. Like, there is, talking a little bit about what some of the risks or the drawbacks are.
What are the cons? Let's do that. What are the cons of using it?
Yeah.
What are the drawbacks?
Yeah. I think, like, right now with AI kind of out in the world, it's a little bit of a case of, Pandora's box is open. This technology is out there. It's advancing. There's certainly some risks that we need to make sure that we're kind of like actively trying to mitigate. I think a lot of folks have these concerns of job replacement, of what's going to happen when AI is ever present, and I think it's a fair concern, and it's something where if you actively build in the space, you can work to mitigate that. And so for healthcare, for instance, right, we've heard concerns from SLPs that I don't want an AI speech therapist working with my clients. Like, that feels weird, that feels wrong, and we agree. Like, there are some things that are just profoundly human that you don't want to outsource to technology, but with the ability of using AI to automate kind of the back office work, the administrative tasks that detract from the care in a lot of settings, like, we can help enable folks to see more clients, deliver better, higher quality care to their kiddos, and hopefully there create an even better experience than potentially before AI was introduced. So I think there's two routes that you can go down, but helping enable professionals in the field to kind of focus on the human aspects of the job. We're hoping that can really lead to some positive outcomes.
That is great. Yeah, I can just picture myself not having that need to have that notebook there and do those check marks, because that's really the only, if I'm working on an R, an L, or an S in whatever position of the word, like, how many times did they get it right out of how many tries did we, how many attempts did we have? What is that percentage? And knowing that I don't have to do that, and that I can focus directly on that child and work on the remediation skills that we need to work on in that moment in time.
Definitely.
Yeah, that would be huge. Now, as far as, what's been the biggest hurdle that you've had so far? Has there been something that SLPs have said, hey, maybe we could make it do this, and you're like, I just don't know if that's possible? Have you had any big hurdles like that?
Yeah, I think definitely the technology is still advancing in terms of, at the core of what we were building out with the documentation solution is taking audio, right, speech, transcribing it into text, and then running analysis based on that. So to your point, there are some things like tracking the number of successes or failures that already are like pretty hard, right? That relies on, especially in the cases with folks with very complicated nuances and how they're speaking, right? It's hard for the technology today to identify, like, was that a successful S sound in the medial position, or was it almost successful? That type of judgment. So where we started was, let's just get the basics down, right? Like, let's summarize what are the activities that were covered in the session based on the kind of cues from the SLP. Can we infer how successfully they were executing a given task? And so we were really using that sort of back and forth context more than we were doing advanced language analysis of the actual pronunciation or execution of the speech sounds. But we found that was already pretty hugely valuable. Just there was enough context in that back and forth to make a really good first pass at assessing, are they advancing? Are they showing improvement from their last session on that sound or that goal? And just pulling together, again, bulk of the body of that SOAP note or of that follow-up email to the patient, their caregiver. And even with more complicated, like full-length evaluations, we were able to build out a pretty good first pass at incorporating all that relevant medical history and the rationale for why the eval was being administered and the results of it. But in terms of that more complicated, doing the language analysis, doing some of the more complex components of the eval that you might want, I think the technology still isn't quite there yet where it can do it fully seamlessly. And there's always going to be probably some margin of error where you need the SLPs to get that judgment, that review. They're always going to, or at least for the foreseeable future, they're going to need to be reviewing that output, layering in the additional nuances and complexities. But it's been pretty cool to see how quickly that type of technology is advancing. Just over the last couple of months, we've seen huge progress in how these models, how precisely they can identify who the different speakers are and start to get into some of
the student versus the clinician. Like, is that the clinician speaking or the student speaking? Which voice sample am I trying to interpret here? What about dialectal differences? Have you gone that route yet? I work with a lot out in California. I work with a lot of Spanish speaking students, and I've been told I have quite a Southern accent. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that once or twice in my life. So what about those different dialects? Are you able to decipher any of that within those voice samples?
Yeah. I think that's one of the other limitations that these models have right now that we're trying to explore a little bit more. But right now, like the way it works is we hear a sample of speech and we're able to transcribe that into written text and then able to run kind of our models on that. But the different intonations, the different arcs of
inflection and all of that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It's difficult for the models to pick up right now. And so yeah, right now, we aren't able to kind of pick up the difference in dialectical variations, but we are doing some interesting explorations of different languages and being able to work with Spanish speakers or other languages and really build a tool that can serve those populations too.
Well, I have a feeling that if anybody can figure it out, you two are going to be able to figure it out. And AI, I mean, honestly, you said something a minute ago, Chirag, you were like, it's changing like every day that you get up. I mean, it's like something new. It's something new. I heard something the other day that Elon Musk was talking about how you can get your printout from the hospital. Like if you go to the doctor and you have blood work done and, they give it back to you and they're like, okay, your glucose is this and your cholesterol is this. I don't know what that means, but you can take a picture of it and upload it to this AI platform and it will decipher it for you and tell you, well, your cholesterol's right where it needs to be, or your glucose is where it needs to be, or this is high, this is low. That's phenomenal. And you can do that from your phone, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing. I mean, we've definitely tried to stay up to date on what's going on in the space. And even for us, it feels like it's impossible to keep up because there's so many different companies, research labs, universities, putting out research, putting out new tools. It's been pretty amazing, just the pace of progress, certainly the last couple of months. And it just seems like, it's not slowing down, which is really exciting. It's definitely a lot, right? It's overwhelming. And so I think that's been, even for us, we've got to figure out like, how do we stay up to date? How do we keep tabs on everything that's changing? To your point earlier too, Michelle, like how do we make sure that this technology is being used in ethical ways, in smart ways that, make sure that it's being used for good outcomes, because there's certainly a lot of potential for it to go either way. So I think that's really important that there are a lot of people with the right intentions really building to help humanity, right? Making sure that this is progressing in the right way. But I think overall, we've been pretty optimistic just seeing the amazing things people are building. I think there's a lot more good coming out of it than bad, at least to date.
When you're talking about these AI platforms, I know this is what all SLPs are going to want to know about. How do you go about the HIPAA compliance, the HIPAA aspect of it? I know that's the biggest thing. And that's one of the things I talked about when I did my short podcast about AI, is you're uploading these voice samples and you're uploading all of this data and all this personal information. How do you make sure it stays compliant and within those regulations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's been like truly at the core of what we're building. I think, anytime that you're taking in healthcare data, especially when it's as sensitive as speech therapy, there's a lot of trust that needs to be with that, right? And so, Josh and I spent a good bit of time, before we even built out anything, thinking through how can we design this in the most secure and ethically secure way. And yeah, we built it with HIPAA compliance from the start. You want to make sure that you have all of your safeguards in place, encrypting the data both while it's in rest in our storage servers, as well as anytime that it's moving between kind of like your computer and where we're hosting it centrally. You want to make sure that the data is always in the hands of the SLP. Anytime they want to delete it or remove it or anonymize it, they've got full capability to do that.
Okay.
And obviously, there's no room for sharing that externally. So
Yeah.
you can never share health data to a third party or even think about selling it. And so that was something that Josh and I both have our healthcare backgrounds. We come from a space where we take PHI incredibly seriously, and yeah, that was really at the core of how we built the system.
That's great. All right, let's talk about your platform specifically. I know we've talked primarily about AI in general, but let's talk about Sira. Tell our listeners what this platform is. I mean, we've talked about what it is, but let's talk about this platform specifically and how SLPs can go about finding out about it, learning more about it, and maybe begin implementing it in their practice. Now, are you guys primarily marketing toward private practices, school districts, healthcare organizations, like as a whole? What is the primary market for Sira?
Yeah, to date, we've worked mostly with private practices. I think we definitely started out with the goal of we want to serve everybody, but we found that it was easiest to build alongside kind of moving rapidly with those private practices where folks had a little more autonomy to test out the tools they wanted to, and just generally smaller practices. So easier to test it out, implement it at small scales. We've definitely had a lot of conversations with folks in healthcare organizations and health systems in school-based roles, and definitely a lot of use cases there. So I think down the line, we want to make this tool useful and other tools that we build for all of those folks. But to date, it's been mostly with private practices. We started out with a focus on, again, that core documentation piece. And so really the core of the product that we built out is, you put in your input from the session. That can take a couple different forms. So it could be a live recording if you have the patient's consent to actually record that session and get that audio recording, or you can do, just afterwards, like a quick voice note of you summarizing the session, or just type up written notes or copy them over from another system. We also have kind of within that session view the ability to do that goal tracking that we were discussing earlier, right? So if you put in the different goals you're tracking with that patient, you can, kind of check off successes or failures for different execution-related tasks, more qualitative goals. You can track notes there. And then what the system does is either, again, for a therapy session or for an eval session, it will take in the context of that session as well as other ones leading up to it and generate a first pass at a couple of those different types of outputs. So the SOAP note, the post-session follow-up, kind of a high-level summary, and then you can, again, make edits to that. We definitely want folks to be reviewing any outputs, making the tweaks, but then you can clean it down. It'll be associated with that given client. You can go back through and see the past notes for a given client. We have some kind of out-of-the-box like charts that will show their progress for specific quantitative metrics. And then we also actually rolled out the ability to do kind of a longer-term progress report. So you can generate over a certain date range or number of sessions, an actual progress report that will pull in the inputs across those and reflect on their progress across. So how they've been performing on certain goals, maybe suggesting if it makes sense to consider implementing new goals or, adjust the care plan at all. So really focused on that documentation piece. We spoke with a lot of folks that also, had pain points in the scheduling or the billing. And so we've thought some about trying to build out more full, almost like EHR, full practice management software there, but we're kind of still evaluating whether it makes sense to do that. A lot of the other tools that are out there now have started to also introduce some more of the kind of automated scribe type capabilities. And so I think we're still exploring a little bit how we spend our time building out tools that will add the most value for folks. But right now it's mostly focused around the documentation capabilities.
And that is, I can tell you for any speech pathologist listening, that is huge. If you can just get me something that's going to help me write my notes and summarize it and then track that progress, that is, that's huge. That would be a game changer for me. So how would someone like me, who I will call myself seasoned instead of old, someone who is seasoned like me, how would I start to get involved and start using. And I think my disclaimer for SLPs listening, Josh, you said it just a second ago, you've got to make sure that if you're in a school district or you're in a hospital, that you're following all protocols,
Right.
that you're going down the right route. You can't just like, I work for X school district, so now I'm going to start using this AI platform and uploading all of my data and all of my therapy session notes to get this great, wonderful output. Well, you need to make sure, disclaimer, make sure you're following your job's protocols for that. So we can't just start implementing it, right? We need to make sure we're being safe, especially if you're in a school district, I know. But one of the things that I did see on your website when I went to it was that this platform is compatible with EHRs already, right? It said something about an easy copy paste. What was that all about in the electronic health records that are already out there that people may be using?
Yeah. So right now, there's a lot of other EHRs out there that a lot of SLPs that we've been talking to have been using. In order to make this kind of like as seamless to work with the EHRs as possible, we wanted to think through like the easiest workflow. And so right now, what that looks like is, it's a one-click copy and paste that can plug in directly into your EHR. A lot of kind of what we've heard is, how can we automate that even more, kind of minimize the number of clicks that that SLPs want to take to put this into their EHR. And so those are some of the things that we've been cooking up over the past few weeks, is thinking about how we can take the output and then programmatically integrate with your EHR more directly. So yeah, we've got that on the roadmap.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Could I learn to use Sira? Do you think after talking to me that someone like me, I know like my daughter is 25, she's a middle school math teacher, and she uses ChatGPT and all these different AI websites in her math classes. And I think I shared with you guys when we had our first meeting that the only time I've used it is I did use it, and I was so proud of myself, where I just put a quick prompt, a 5th grade reading passage with 10 WH questions. And it was there in seconds. Like, it was incredible. And I was like, oh, well, that was really easy. But now that's different than what you guys have out there with Sira. So how difficult is it to start using and to navigate? Could someone like me, who might be a little bit more challenged with the computer, could I use it?
Yeah, that's absolutely the goal. I mean, we've had folks come on all different ranges of, how much they've used different AI, different technology in the past. And we've certainly tried to design it to be as user-friendly, as easy to pick up as possible. We've got kind of a basic little click-through tutorial. When you launch the app for the first time, we have a little quick demo video on our website that gives folks a general sense of kind of the core functionality. And definitely, like Chirag mentioned, we want this to add as few clicks, as little time as possible to folks' current workflow. And so that's really been kind of a guiding principle as we've designed it. We've designed for simplicity, for user-friendliness. Obviously, we are constantly learning and improving and trying to make it even easier to use. And so we're always open to feedback there. But we found folks be able to start using it within minutes, right? You hop on, you can add a new client profile with as little information as just a first name and last name, and then be in the session generating outputs right away. So certainly designed to be as plug and play, easy to pick up as possible.
What about early intervention? Will it be, because I know you had said, Chirag, earlier that, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a voice session, like a voice recorded session. It could be my notes. It could be, what I've typed in there. So for my friends, I used to do early intervention, which that's a very different therapeutic model. It's family training, that parent coaching model. It's not that direct therapeutic model. So could it be used in that arena as well? And could it be used for occupational therapy and physical therapy when they're doing those kinds of things and those kinds of notes?
Yeah, totally. I think that's very much the goal of platform, is that it can be used across different care settings and across different purposes. It's been fun. Initially we had just built this out for SLPs, but we started to see some pull, some inbound interest from the physical therapy world, from OTs as well, saying like, we're also drowning in paperwork and in documentation.
Yeah.
How can we use this? And so, we've worked to kind of expand that model. And yeah, I think when it comes to parent coaching, when it comes to IEPs, that's a big part of the market that we're hoping to serve. And so, our model is able to pick up the distinction between a parent, a clinician, and a child all in the same room, and parent coaching is very much one of the main artifacts that we're trying to create. So yeah, we've seen
awesome.
folks using it in those settings a good bit and getting a good bit of value out of it. That's
amazing. Guys, this has been so amazing. So tell our listeners where they can, I know where to get it. It's at getsyra.com, GETSYRA.com. The website was super user-friendly, even for someone like me. So kudos on that. It was very easy to navigate. Lots of great information there about this AI platform. We've talked about what was next. You guys are you're ever expanding. Like every day, you're adding things and you're talking to people. I always ask my guests at the end of the interview advice they would give to SLPs. So what advice would you give to SLPs who are maybe like me, a little bit hesitant to jump into this world of AI? Or even young people, because I know young people are just so not scared to do stuff. But how do we get started? What advice would you give SLPs if they're thinking about looking into this AI platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, a lot of it is just giving it a try, right? Trying to learn more. There is so much information out there, but we've designed our tool, for example, to be really easy to just explore, right? Like you can use it, you can test it out. You don't need to use it for the first time in a live session where it feels like it's high stakes. We've had folks, do a practice session with their kid, or even just do a little bit of role play and test it out, see what the output looks like, kind of get comfortable with how to use it, what it's going to output. And I think a lot of folks have found that it integrates a lot more seamlessly than they expected into their current workflow, where you can have it run in the background, review the output on your own time, really make it work for you. And so our tool and others out there, I think there's so many different people building, not necessarily a lot of people building specifically for speech therapy, which was one reason that we wanted to do it, but there's so many tools out there, and a lot of them you can at least try them for free. I think there's no downside to testing it out on your own time, just being curious about it. That's how we've learned a ton, is just reading online, but then just building, right? Like trying the free trial of some tool, seeing what it can do, thinking about how it can be useful for us. So it's really, like Chirag said, it's kind of like a Pandora's box thing. Like there's so much going on out there, but the best way to learn is just by trying it out, I think, experimenting.
Yeah.
I love that. I think I'm going to try it. I'm going to go to getsyra.com. I'm going to register and I'm going to try it out and I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah. I feel like you could be an absolute power user. Yeah.
I don't know about that, Chirag. I might be a user. I don't know about a power user. But I think that, for someone like me who's been doing this for 25 plus years, even when I first started, I mean, people do not believe me, but I used to write IEPs by hand. I was working in a school district in Orlando, Florida, when the first electronic IEP system was developed and we started doing IEPs on the computers. So I used to write them by hand on the duplicate forms, and you would have to press down really hard to make sure it went through all 3 copies. I mean, it was horrible. And I think back to that, and I think now all of the information that goes into it, I could not imagine having to sit down and write an IEP by hand. It was crazy. And now it's just click, 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 click. I worked on one this morning and it took me, 20 minutes where it would have taken me 2 hours to write it by hand.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
You guys have been absolutely amazing. I have enjoyed so much talking to you and learning about Sira. So for all of our SLPs out there, go to the website, getsyra.com. Make sure that you follow us on TikTok. I know both of you young boys have TikTok. So go follow us on SLP Full Disclosure on TikTok. And if you guys have any questions specific to Josh or Chirag, reach out and ask them those questions. Because AI is here. There's nothing we can do to stop it. And we're either going to get on the train or it's just going to pass us by, right?
Yeah, that's definitely how we're thinking about it. Yeah, folks can definitely feel free to reach out. We have an email, team@getsyra.com. We're always happy to connect with folks. We've learned so much from all the SLPs we've spoken with. So any opportunity we can, give back, help others learn, explore opportunities to build things together, we're always excited to have those conversations, hear from people. So definitely anybody feel free to reach out.
All right. Josh, Chirag, thank you guys so much for joining us today. It has been so much fun. I've learned so much. And you will probably be hearing from me at the email address with questions when I download it. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to y'all soon.
That's good. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for tuning in to SLP Full Disclosure. You can learn more about this episode and our show on our website at amnhealthcare.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find show updates and SLP opportunities on our Instagram at AMN Allied. Special thanks to AMN Healthcare for making this show possible. See y'all next time.